"Don't worry, Mom, no one's going to be stuck babysitting you this year." He said it like a joke, light as wrapping paper, and everyone at the table laughed because laughter is what families do when they don't want to look too closely at what's being said. My son's eyes slid past mine as if I were a lamp in the corner, useful for ambiance, easy to ignore. His wife Kendra smiled into her wine glass, and I watched the red stain the curve of the glass like a quiet warning. I kept my own smile steady, the one I'd practiced over decades of swallowed disappointment. My hands stayed folded in my lap, nails trimmed, sweater pressed, posture dignified. "Babysitting," he'd said, as if 72 years of living turned a woman into a chore you schedule between errands. Outside, Michigan winter pressed its pale face to the windows, snow like sifted flour drifting over the backyard. In the living room, my old snow globe sat on the mantel, wooden base, tiny church inside, the kind with a hand-painted steeple and a faint gold star above it. I'd bought it the year my husband died, when Christmas felt like a room I didn't know how to enter anymore. When you shook it, the snow fell in a gentle blizzard over that little church, and for a moment, the world looked innocent again. That night, after they left with their leftovers and their laughter, I stood alone by that snow globe and didn't shake it. I didn't want pretend snow. I wanted truth. Kendra had asked, as she always did, about my plans for Christmas in the tone you use for confirming a delivery time. "We're thinking of doing Christmas Eve at my sister's," she'd said. "It's complicated for you, though. Lots of stairs and kids, you know." I knew plenty. I knew she never said my name when she could avoid it. I knew her kindness came pre-packaged with conditions. I knew my son Evan had learned to call neglect logistics because it sounded better than guilt. And I knew that when a woman starts explaining why you can't be included, she's already made peace with excluding you. "I'll be fine," I told them. "Christmas comes whether we're ready or not." Evan had patted my shoulder like a consoling nurse. "We'll swing by, okay? We'll FaceTime at least." Kendra's smile tightened. "Unless it's chaos. You know how it gets." Then they were gone, and the house absorbed the quiet the way snow absorbs sound. I moved through the rooms, turning off lights, the small rituals of a life lived alone. Locked the door, checked the stove, set the thermostat. My footsteps sounded too loud on the hardwood, and I found myself whispering, "It's okay to no one at all." I wasn't always alone. That's the part people forget when they look at you and see only what you are now. I had been the center of things once, the one who remembered birthdays, who made casseroles for funerals, who kept the family calendar in my head like a hymn. For nearly 30 years, I worked the front office at a dental clinic in Grand Rapids, smiling through insurance phone calls, bringing home peppermint from the receptionist's jar, saving for Evan's braces and his first car. My husband Frank was a man who believed in showing up. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he never made me feel like an obligation. When he died, unexpectedly, of a stroke on a Tuesday morning in late October, the world didn't just get quiet, it got hollow. People brought soup and said they were sorry, then life moved on, and mine didn't know how. That snow globe appeared a month later, in a thrift shop on Division Avenue. The woman behind the counter said, "It's sweet, isn't it? Like old-time Christmas." I shook it once, watched the snow swirl around that little church, and bought it without bargaining. I took it home and set it on the mantel as if placing a vow. I will still make beauty where I can. Years later, Evan met Kendra at a corporate holiday party. She worked in HR, wore confidence like perfume, laughed a little too loudly so people would notice. When he brought her over for the first time, she complimented my living room the way a realtor does. "It's cute," she said, eyes scanning corners. "You've kept it intact." Intact, like I was a museum display. There were red flags, of course. They always arrive wearing something that looks harmless. Kendra would suggest helping with my bills, simplifying my accounts. She'd talk about the future in a voice that made my skin tighten. Evan would nod along, eager to please her, eager to avoid conflict, eager to be the good husband, even if it meant being a half-present son. At first, it was little things. She'd host dinners and forget to tell me until the last minute, then sigh dramatically when I couldn't drive at night. She'd pick a restaurant with tight booths and high stools, then look mildly annoyed when I asked for a chair. She'd tease me about my old lady purse in front of her friends, a laugh that invited others to join. I learned to shrug it off. I learned to be the older woman who can take a joke because nobody wants to be accused of being sensitive. But sensitivity isn't weakness. Sometimes it's your spirit warning you that something is shifting and not in your favor. The first true betrayal arrived in early December, hidden inside a helpful conversation. We were in my kitchen, the air smelling of cinnamon because I'd been making spiced apples on the stove. Evan sat at the table scrolling on his phone. Kendra stood by the counter tapping her manicured nail on a stack of envelopes. "You're still getting paper statements?" she asked, as if I'd confessed to churning my own butter. "I like to see things," I said. "It keeps me organized." She made a face. "It's not safe. Mail gets stolen. Identity theft is huge." Evan looked up, half concerned, half bored. "Maybe you should go paperless, Mom." I felt my jaw tighten. "I've been managing my finances since before you were born." Kendra's smile had that HR warmth, soft, professional, faintly condescending. "No one's saying you can't. We just worry. And you've had those dizzy spells, right? What if something happens and we can't access anything to help you?" "If something happens," the sentence hung there like a rope. "I have a living will," I said carefully, "and Frank and I set things up." Kendra slid a form across the counter. "This is just a standard thing. Power of attorney. It would make everything easier. You wouldn't even notice." I stared at the paper. The words looked like a foreign language when you know someone is trying to make you sign away something you can't get back. I didn't sign it. I folded it slowly and handed it back. "I'll review it," I said, "with my lawyer." Evan's eyebrows lifted. "Your lawyer? Mom, come on." Kendra's tone tightened. "It's just a precaution. It's just my life," I replied, still calm, still dignified, though my chest felt like it was filling with ice water. "I'll handle it." Kendra's eyes flicked to the mantel in the living room where the snow globe sat. "That thing is still there," she said abruptly, as if changing topics would reset the tension. "It's charming." "It belonged to no one," I said, "so I guess it belongs to me." She laughed lightly. "Everything belongs to someone, eventually." That night, after they left, I shook the snow globe until the little church disappeared in white. I watched the snow settle slowly, and I thought about ownership, about what people believe they're entitled to when they think you're nearing the end. The second betrayal came a week later, in the shape of a phone notification I wasn't supposed to see. Evan had come by to help me change a light bulb in the hallway. He climbed the step stool with the ease of a man still in his prime, while I held the stool steady. His phone buzzed on the console table, screen lighting up with a message preview. "Kendra, did you move the savings yet? Before she notices?" My hand didn't move. My breathing didn't change. I stared at that message as if it might rearrange itself into something innocent. Evan hopped down, sweat on his temple. "All set," he said, grabbing his phone quickly. Too quickly. "What savings?" I asked, voice even. He froze, then put on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Huh?" "I saw the message," I said. "What savings?" He opened his mouth, closed it, and I watched the boy I raised struggle between honesty and the habit of pleasing his wife. "Mom," he said, "it's nothing. Kendra just worries." "About what?" My tone stayed gentle, but there was steel under it. He sighed, shoulders slumping. "About you being alone. About money management. She thinks maybe we should streamline things, put some accounts under our oversight." "My oversight has kept this house paid off and your college debt free," I said. The words were factual, not angry. "I know," he said quickly. "I know, but she thinks it's safer." "I'm going to call my bank," I said. Evan's face tightened. "Mom, don't make this a thing." That phrase, "don't make this a thing," is what people say when they're already making it a thing and just don't want consequences. I called the bank the next morning. The woman on the phone was polite, efficient, and the kind of helpful that comes from following procedure. She verified my identity, then paused. "Ma'am," she said, voice careful, "there was an online transfer requested from your savings to a linked account last week. It's pending verification because it exceeds your typical activity." My heart thudded once, hard. "What linked account?" I asked. She gave me the last 4 digits. I recognized them immediately. It was Evan's joint account with Kendra. "I did not authorize that," I said, and the calm in my voice startled even me. "I understand," she replied. We placed a hold. Would you like to file a fraud report? Fraud. A word that sounds like crime because it is. Yes, I said. And I want every access point locked. I want new passwords, new security questions, and I want a record of who attempted it. The woman hesitated. There is also a note on your account that your son requested to be added as an authorized contact. I did not authorize that either, I said. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not from age but from rage, kept under a tight lid. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the wood grain, at the scratch near the edge from a holiday knife set Frank had once insisted we buy. My life had marks. My family was leaving new ones. I didn't call Evan immediately. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I did what women like me have learned to do when the ground shifts under you. I made a plan. The third betrayal came on Christmas Eve, wrapped in cheerful music and a lie. Kendra called that afternoon, voice bright. So, she said, we're leaving soon. Roads are getting bad. We might not make it over tomorrow. Tomorrow is Christmas, I said. I know, she chirped, too breezy. But it's just, the kids are excited. We don't want to risk anything. What kids? I asked, because they didn't have children. Kendra's sister did. She laughed like I'd misunderstood something obvious. Oh, you know what I mean. The family, it's going to be loud. You wouldn't enjoy it. The truth was, they weren't worried about roads. They were worried about appearances. They wanted a Christmas that didn't include an older woman who might remind people of obligations. I could come to you, I said. A pause. Then a softer voice. The kind people use when delivering bad news but trying to sound kind. It's not a good idea. There's no room. And honestly, Evan is exhausted. He needs a break. A break from me, I thought. And my throat tightened. But I didn't let the words spill out. I see, I said. We'll call, she promised. Merry Christmas, okay? After she hung up, I stood in my living room, staring at the snow globe on the mantel. Outside, dusk turned the world blue-gray, the kind of Michigan evening that feels like the sky is holding its breath. I shook the snow globe once, watched the white swirl. The tiny church inside looked peaceful, untouched. If only peace were that easy, I thought. That night I went to bed early because there was nothing else to do. I lay in the dark listening to the house settle, to the occasional groan of old pipes, to the wind teasing the eaves. My phone sat on the nightstand like a dare. No call came. On Christmas morning, I woke before dawn out of habit. For years, I'd been the first awake, the one who started coffee, who warmed cinnamon rolls, who wrapped last-minute gifts with careful corners. Frank used to come up behind me in the kitchen, kiss the back of my head and say, "You make the world feel like home." That morning, the kitchen was cold. The coffee pot looked too big for one cup. I poured water slowly, listening to the hollow gurgle, and felt a sadness so sharp it was almost clean. I checked my phone. No message. No missed call. Around 10, I tried calling Evan. It went to voicemail on the second ring. "Hey Mom," his recorded voice said, cheerful and young, the voice of a man who still thinks he's safe from consequence. "Leave a message." I didn't leave one. I stared at my reflection in the black screen when the call ended. Gray hair neatly brushed, eyes tired but steady. A woman who had survived grief and work and childbirth and loneliness. A woman who had earned better than being discarded on a holiday she spent her whole life making meaningful for others. At noon, the snow started falling heavier, thick flakes that softened the world. I stood at the front window watching cars creep past, headlights dull in the white. A neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, trudged by with a scarf over her mouth, carrying a casserole dish toward another house. She waved when she saw me, and I waved back, my hand small and lonely against the glass. I made myself lunch soup, because it was easy, and ate it standing over the sink, because sitting at the table felt too much like admitting defeat. I told myself they'd call later. I told myself something had happened. I told myself all the lies we tell to keep our hearts from breaking fully. At 3, I heard laughter outside. I looked through the curtains and saw Evan's SUV pulling into the Donnellys' driveway across the street. Kendra climbed out in a long coat, hair curled, cheeks flushed. Evan followed, carrying a pie. They walked up the Donnellys' steps like welcome guests. I stared, unmoving as if my body had forgotten how. Across the street, Mrs. Donnelly opened the door, delighted. Evan hugged her. Then Mrs. Donnelly glanced toward my house, toward my front window, and her smile faltered. She looked back at Evan, confusion creasing her forehead. Evan didn't look at my house. He kept walking inside. Something inside me went very still. It wasn't just that they hadn't come. It was that they had chosen to be across the street, in public, enjoying the warmth of community while leaving me behind a thin wall of glass. It was a humiliation that felt deliberate, like a message, we can do this, and you can't stop us. I backed away from the window slowly, as if moving too fast would crack me. My hand went to the mantel, to the snow globe. The glass was cold against my fingertip. I shook it hard. The snow inside churned into a storm, burying the little church. I watched it swirl and thought, I didn't cry, not then. I went to my desk drawer and pulled out the folder labeled Frank. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years, the deed, the will, insurance papers, bank contact information. Frank had always been meticulous. He'd left me instructions the way he left me love, quietly, fully. I made phone calls the next morning, December 26th, when the holiday glow had barely faded and my anger was still clean and hot. I called my bank again, requested printed records of attempted transfers. I asked for IP logs, login timestamps, any note attached to the account. I requested it all in writing. Then I called my attorney, Marjorie Lasky, a woman I'd met years ago when Frank and I updated our will. Marjorie's voice was crisp, reassuring, and not easily fooled. When I told her what happened, she didn't gasp. She didn't dramatize. She just said, okay, we're gonna protect you. Can we? I asked, and hated the vulnerability in my own voice. Yes, she said simply, but we need evidence, and we need to move quickly. Evidence, that word again, now like a tool in my hand. Over the next week, I began collecting proof the way a careful woman collects recipes, step by step, no rushing, no skipping. I printed bank statements. I wrote down dates and times. I saved the voicemail where Evan ignored my call and later texted, "Sorry chaos, talk soon." I took screenshots. I asked the bank for the fraud report. I also did something that felt both humiliating and empowering. I told the truth out loud to someone who wasn't family. I invited Mrs. Donnelly over for tea. She arrived with peppermint cookies and guilt in her eyes. I saw them, she said before I even poured the tea. I didn't know. I truly didn't know. I know, I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. She wrung her hands. I asked Evan where you were, honey. I did. He said you were resting, that you didn't feel up to visitors. My lips pressed together. Did he look you in the eye when he said it? She hesitated. Not really. Would you be willing, I asked gently, to write down what you saw? What he said. Her eyes widened. A statement? Yes, I said. Just the truth. Date, time, what you witnessed. Mrs. Donnelly swallowed, then nodded. Of course. If you need it, you have it. When she left, my hands trembled again, not from fear but from the strange feeling of being believed. For so long my pain had been private, dismissed as misunderstanding. Having another person confirm what happened felt like someone turning on a light. But I wasn't done, because neglect is often paired with theft, and I had begun to suspect Christmas wasn't their first attempt, just their boldest. I took inventory of my home, the way you do after a storm. I opened drawers, looked in closets, checked the small safe in my bedroom where I kept my mother's wedding ring and Frank's old watch. The safe was there, but the ring box felt lighter than it should. My mother's ring, an opal set in gold, was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the empty velvet space where it had rested. I pictured Kendra's hands, her neat nails, lifting it like it was a trinket. I pictured Evan's silence, his willingness to let it happen because confronting her would be uncomfortable. I called Evan then. This time he answered, voice cautious. Hey, Mom, my mother's ring is missing, I said. A pause. What? It was in my safe, I said. Now it's not. Mom, are you sure? His tone shifted into that familiar place, questioning my certainty, implying my age. Yes, I said, and my voice sharpened. The safe code is known only to me, unless someone watched me enter it. Another pause, longer. Then Kendra was looking for some documents the other day. She said you told her she could. I did not, I said. He exhaled. Okay. Okay, I'll ask her. Ask her, I repeated softly. Evan, I'm not asking, I'm telling you it's missing, and if it isn't returned, I'll report it stolen. His voice turned defensive. Mom, you're making this into a huge thing. I'm making it into the size it already is, I said. You left me alone on Christmas and lied about it. You tried to move my money, and now something precious is missing from my home. The thing is already huge, you just don't like how it looks. He didn't speak for a moment. When he did, his voice was smaller. We didn't meaning doesn't replace damage, I said. Return the ring. He hung up. 2 days later, a padded envelope appeared in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was my mother's ring, wrapped in tissue paper. No note, no apology. I held the ring in my palm and felt something inside me settle. Not peace, something harder, certainty. In early January, Marjorie met me in her office. She wore glasses on a chain and had the kind of calm that comes from knowing the law can be a shield if you use it correctly. She spread the bank documents across her desk, along with the fraud report and my timeline notes. This is enough to establish attempted unauthorized access, she said, and your neighbor's statement helps with the neglect pattern. But if we're going to do this thoroughly, I need to know, do you want reconciliation or do you want boundaries that can't be argued with? I thought about the word reconciliation, how it sounded like a pretty ribbon on a broken gift. I want safety, I said. I want dignity. If they want reconciliation, they can earn it. Marjorie nodded. Good. Here's what we can do. We updated my will, not as a threat, not as a tantrum, but as a fact. My estate would go into a trust managed by a third party, with distributions tied to specific conditions. There would be no easy cash grab, no chance to pressure me into signing away control. Evan would receive what was appropriate after certain safeguards, and Kendra would receive nothing directly, not out of spite, out of necessity. Marjorie also recommended something that made my stomach twist, a formal letter of no trespass notice. It would prohibit Kendra from entering my home without my explicit consent. If she did, she could be removed. It sounds extreme, Marjorie said, reading my face, but it's a boundary you can enforce. I never thought I'd need legal language to keep my family from taking advantage of me, I admitted. Marjorie's voice softened. We don't use the law because we want conflict. We use it because some people only respect what has consequences. Consequences. That word again, now warm with purpose. The final piece was proof of the attempted transfer. The bank provided login data and the device used, an IP address tied to Kendra's work laptop, according to an IT lookup Marjorie's office paid for. They also provided a note the request to add Evan as authorized contact had been made through the online portal. Using a security question answer, Kendra likely knew because she'd listened to me talk about Frank for years. I stared at the printout, the neat lines of data that turned my suspicion into fact. My hands didn't shake this time. My anger had matured into something steadier, resolve. I planned my confrontation carefully because I wasn't interested in screaming. I was interested in being believed. In late January, our church hosted its annual community dinner. Potluck tables, choir rehearsal afterward, families bundled in winter coats laughing under fluorescent lights. It was public in the right way, not a stage, but a room full of people who had known me for years. People who had watched me organize charity drives, deliver meals, sit in the front pew with Frank and sing hymns with my whole chest. Evan and Kendra would be there. Kendra liked church because it made her look generous. Evan liked church because it made him feel like a good man by association. I arrived early carrying a casserole dish and a folder tucked inside my tote bag. The folder was plain manila, unremarkable, like the kind you'd use for doctor's paperwork. I sat near the front with Mrs. Donnelly and 2 other women who knew my name and my story. When Evan walked in, he spotted me and hesitated. Kendra's hand rested on his arm, guiding him forward like a leash. She wore a cream sweater and pearl earrings, her hair smooth, her smile bright. "Hi," Evan said, approaching like someone stepping onto thin ice. "Hello, sweetheart," I replied. My voice was soft, almost affectionate. The calm unnerved him more than anger would have. Kendra leaned in with a kiss on my cheek that didn't touch me. "So nice to see you out," she said, as if I'd been hidden away. I smiled politely. "It is. We ate. People chatted. The room smelled of baked ham and sweet rolls. Somewhere behind us, a child laughed, and for a moment I felt the strange split of my life. How normal everything looked to others. How sharp the truth felt inside me. After dinner, Pastor Tom stood near the front to thank everyone. He spoke about community, about caring for one another, about honoring elders, not just with words but with action. His sermonette felt like the universe lining up, not in magic, but in coincidence that makes you pay attention. When Pastor Tom finished, he asked if anyone had announcements. My heart beat once, heavy. I stood. The room quieted with the natural respect people give a woman they recognize as steady. Evan's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. Kendra's smile faltered for the first time. "I don't have an announcement," I said, voice calm, carrying easily. "I have a truth, and I'm sharing it here because I'm done being quiet in private while being polite in public." You could feel the air change, subtle, like the moment before snow starts falling. Evan stood halfway, as if to stop me, then sat again, frozen. I looked at Pastor Tom first. "Pastor, I want you to know this isn't about drama. It's about safety." He nodded, expression sober. "Go ahead." I turned toward the room. "Some of you know I spent Christmas alone this year," I said. "That happens, people travel, plans change. But what happened wasn't a plan change. It was a choice." A murmur rippled through the tables. I saw Mrs. Donnelly's face tighten in support. I continued. "My son and his wife told me they couldn't come because of weather and family obligations. That same day, they attended a Christmas gathering across the street from my home. Mrs. Donnelly can confirm that Evan told her I was resting when I was in fact alone." Kendra's face went pale. Evan's jaw worked like he was chewing on panic. Kendra stood suddenly. "This is inappropriate," she snapped, voice louder than necessary. "This is private family business." I looked at her, steady. "It became public when you made my neglect part of your public holiday." Gasps. Soft. Surprised. Pastor Tom's eyes narrowed slightly, not unkind but alert. I lifted the manila folder. "And it didn't stop there," I said. "In December, there was an attempted online transfer from my savings account to an account belonging to Evan and Kendra. My bank flagged it as unusual and froze it before the money moved." Evan's face drained of color. He stared at the table, unable to look at anyone. Kendra laughed sharply. A brittle sound. "That's absurd." I pulled out the printouts, held them up just enough for Pastor Tom and the nearest tables to see the bank letterhead. "Here are the records," I said. "Login timestamps, the linked account number, the fraud hold." The room had gone so quiet I could hear a spoon clink against a plate. Kendra's hands clenched at her sides. "You're accusing me of stealing." "I'm stating what happened," I replied, "and I'm done being manipulated into silence." Evan finally spoke, voice cracking. "Mom, please." "Please what?" I asked, and my voice remained gentle, which somehow made the words sharper. "Please let you keep enjoying a reputation you haven't earned? Please let you keep telling yourself you're a good son while you let your wife treat me like property?" His eyes filled, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to run into my arms after school, smelling like crayons. But then Kendra put a hand on his back, pressing, controlling. "This is elder abuse," someone said from a nearby table, a woman I recognized from the quilting circle. Her voice was stunned. Kendra's head whipped toward her. "Excuse me?" Pastor Tom stepped forward, calm but firm. "Kendra," he said, "sit down." Kendra stared at him, shocked that he'd speak to her like that in public. She sat, stiff. I drew a breath. My chest hurt, but it was the ache of releasing something heavy. "I've updated my will," I said. "I've secured my accounts, and I've put in writing that Kendra is not permitted in my home without my direct consent. This isn't revenge. This is protection." Kendra's face turned red. "You're humiliating us." I looked at her and felt a strange peace settle in. "Humiliation is what you did to me," I said. "I'm just letting the light in." Evan whispered, "Mom," like a prayer. I softened just a fraction, because I am not cruel by nature. "Evan," I said, "I love you, but love without respect is a leash. I won't wear it anymore." A woman near the back stood. "I work at the bank," she said quietly, and my heart jumped because I hadn't known. Not hers, but I see these cases. This is serious. Kendra's mouth opened, closed. She looked around the room and realized what she'd built her image on. The approval of others was crumbling under the weight of documented truth. Pastor Tom spoke again. If there has been attempted financial exploitation, he said, you should file a report with the proper authorities, and if anyone here is experiencing similar issues, please speak to me or to someone you trust. No one should suffer in silence. I nodded, not triumphant, not gloating, just steady. Evan began to cry quietly, shoulders shaking. It wasn't dramatic. It was the slow collapse of a story he'd been telling himself. Kendra leaned toward him, hissing something under her breath, but he didn't move the way he usually did when she tugged. For the first time, he looked at her like he was seeing her. The aftermath was not neat, because real life rarely is. Kendra left the dinner early, face tight with fury, coat pulled around her like armor. Evan stayed behind, sitting alone at the table after people began clearing dishes, his hands clasped as if in prayer. When the room thinned, he approached me. His eyes were red, his voice was small. I didn't think it would go that far, he said. I didn't think You didn't want to think, I said quietly. Because thinking would have required you to choose. He flinched. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I studied him, the grown man I'd raised. The man who had tried to keep peace by sacrificing mine. I felt grief, not only for what he'd done, but for what it meant. My son had become someone who could rationalize harming his own mother if it made his life easier. Sorry is a beginning, I said, not an ending. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. What do I do? You tell the truth, I said. To yourself first, then to her, and you stop letting discomfort decide your character. He swallowed hard. She's going to be furious. I held his gaze. So was I said. I just didn't take it out on someone weaker. The legal part followed with the steady pace of paperwork. Marjorie filed formal notices. The bank completed their investigation and recorded the attempted transfer as unauthorized. I chose not to pursue criminal charges immediately, partly because the money never left, partly because I wanted to see what Evan would do when forced to confront the truth without a courtroom demanding it. But I did file a report with Adult Protective Services for documentation, and I did request a restraining order against Kendra entering my property. Not because I wanted spectacle, but because boundaries without enforcement are just wishes. Kendra tried, at first, to rewrite the narrative. She told a few people I was confused, paranoid, lonely. She tried to make my clarity look like decline. But she underestimated something. In a community, your reputation is built over years, and truth has roots. People had known me too long to believe I'd suddenly become hysterical without reason, and I had evidence, not emotion, to support every claim. One afternoon in February, Evan came to my house alone. The driveway was wet with melting snow, the sky a clean Michigan gray. He stood on my porch looking like a man who hadn't slept well in weeks. I moved out, he said quietly when I opened the door. I didn't gasp. I didn't celebrate. I nodded once, letting the fact land without drama. Come in, I said. He stepped inside like a guest instead of an owner, and I noticed it immediately. He looked around the living room, the familiar furniture, the framed photos, the snow globe on the mantel. His gaze lingered on it. Dad loved Christmas, he said softly. He loved the meaning, I replied. Evan sat on the couch, hands clasped. She said you were trying to ruin her, he murmured. She said you were jealous. I let out a quiet, humorless breath. Jealous of what? He winced. I know. He rubbed his eyes like a tired child. I saw the bank records, Mom. I didn't want to see them at first. She kept saying it was misunderstandings, that you forgot, that you told her she could. But then I remembered. I remembered how careful you are, how Dad was, and I realized I'd been letting her rewrite reality. That's what manipulators do, I said. They don't just take money, they take certainty. He nodded slowly, swallowing. I'm sorry I left you. On Christmas. The words were finally plain, without excuses. I looked at him and felt something in me ache. Do you know what it feels like? I asked softly, to watch your child choose warmth across the street while you stand behind glass? His eyes filled again. I didn't think you saw, he whispered. That's the part that breaks a mother, I said. Not just that you left, that you assumed I wouldn't matter enough to notice. He covered his face with his hands and sobbed, quiet, ugly, human. I didn't rush to comfort him, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I needed him to sit with what he'd done without me rescuing him from discomfort. Mothers rescue by instinct. Sometimes that instinct needs restraint. When he calmed, he looked up. "Can we fix this?" he asked. I stared at the snow globe, at the tiny church inside. The snow had settled, clear again. "We can build something," I said carefully, "but it won't look like before. Before was built on me carrying everything. If you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect, accountability, and boundaries." He nodded. "Okay," he whispered, "I'll do that." Over the next months, he proved it in small ways. He came by weekly, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. He offered to shovel without being asked. He listened without interrupting. When I said no, he accepted it without sulking. Kendra sent messages at first, sharp, blaming, pleading, when blame didn't work. I didn't respond. Marjorie did, in legal language that made my boundaries unarguable. Eventually, the messages stopped. I heard through the grapevine that Kendra told people I was heartless. I smiled to myself the first time I heard it. Heartless women don't spend decades loving people who disappoint them. Heartless women don't cry alone in kitchens. Heartless women don't keep showing up until they finally realize showing up to be mistreated is not virtue, it's self-abandonment. The most surprising part wasn't Evan's remorse or Kendra's anger. It was what happened inside me. For years I'd measured my worth by my usefulness. If I could host, cook, help, pay, forgive, then I had a place. When they left me on Christmas, they accidentally gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, a clear view of myself without their demands. In March, when the sun began to stretch longer across the snowbanks, I started taking walks again. I put on my boots and walked down the street, where bare trees reached for the sky like hands. I waved at neighbors. I stopped at the library and checked out books I'd never had time to read. I joined a community class on estate planning, not because I wanted to obsess, but because knowledge is a kind of protection. I also did something that felt ridiculous at first. I bought a new snow globe, not to replace the old one. The old one had history, but this new one was different. Inside it was a little house, not a church, with warm yellow windows. The base was plain. The snow fell slower. It looked like a home that didn't need permission to be peaceful. I set it beside the first snow globe on my mantle. 2 small worlds, 2 lessons. One afternoon, Evan noticed them and asked, "Why 2?" I touched the older globe gently. "This one reminds me of what I survived," I said. Then I touched the newer one. "This one reminds me of what I'm building." He nodded, swallowing, and for the first time I saw him understand that my life wasn't a chapter in his story. It was its own whole book. The next Christmas, I did not beg for invitations. I did not wait by the phone. I made plans like a woman who knows she belongs wherever she chooses to be. Mrs. Donnelly invited me over early in the day, and I went, carrying a plate of cookies and my dignity like a wrapped gift. Evan came later, alone, face softer, eyes clearer. He hugged me carefully, as if he knew he had to earn the right to hold me. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "So am I," I replied. That night, when I returned home, I stood by the mantel and looked at the snow globes. I picked up the old one and shook it gently. The snow swirled over the little church, and for a moment, the world inside looked like it was starting over. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt relief, because the sweetest justice isn't watching someone else fall. It's standing back up with your name intact. If you're listening to this and you've been made to feel like a burden by family, by friends, by anyone who thinks your age makes you powerless, hear me clearly. You are not an inconvenience. You are a whole person with rights, with history, with wisdom that deserves respect. If someone is pressuring you about money, documents, or help that feels like control, trust that feeling. Document everything. Tell someone outside the family. Ask for help from professionals who understand these patterns. And most of all, remember this: boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. Now tell me, have you ever been treated like an obligation by the people who should have protected you? What did you do next?